By the way, I didn't add this in, but we are trying to, even though we don't have the culture ourselves solidified, we are trying to already inculcate others into our ideas. A lot of it for political reasons, because we're running out of steam, literally, on securing transport lines and dealing, and the transport sea lanes are only going to get more complicated with what? Potential traffic in the Arctic. No, I'm not talking about tomorrow, but the Navy's planning for it. With liquefied natural gas, right, being cheaper on the spot market than piped, and all these new liquefaction terminals going up everywhere. So the protection, and China potentially having a blue water navy at some point. So, and wanting to protect their assets coming out of places like Africa. So, is it? Yeah, I think some of it is publicity, but I think overall the mission is there, to scale it up to something that's more than just a few demonstrators. Yeah, one here and one back.
Well, I think it's kind of funny too. Like you showed the diagram of energy efficiency, energy security, and then climate change. Well, I can tell you, like in Iraq and Afghanistan, like how we got rid of garbage was there's a big pit, and you just threw everything in it and you burned it. And I mean, it'd be tremendously expensive to have some kind of a recycling program or something that way you're forwardly deployed, because it'd just be ridiculous. But it seems kind of two-handed at the same time, even though I know it wouldn't be efficient. And also, like you'd mentioned how much our fuel consumption and related to deaths. But I have to tell you, like that fuel consumption, though, at the same time, it saves a lot of lives. Because I even knew a couple. Well, I didn't personally know, but I had friends when I was deployed that, well, like on their first deployment, they didn't have AC, and they had people just go to sleep feeling fine, and then just not wake up. And I can say, like, even in Kuwait, we were in a tent that didn't have AC for a couple of weeks. You'd go to bed and just wake up in a puddle of your own sweat. So you could just easily, like, dehydrate, especially if there wasn't a place for you to get out of those kind of, that hot environment.
Right. Right. And those are the kind of arguments that are made by the operators, right? There's no way we're going to cut this fuel usage as long as our generators are still using fuel. That's the way we got to go. I'm not going to expend lives. Yeah, there was one in the back. Oh, sorry. Just
one of the effects of privatization, though, regarding the private contractors that was spoken to earlier, wouldn't those incentives of private property and economics and whatnot in general lead to an increased use of current conservation of fuel? And obviously the gentleman in the front would know more about this, but wouldn't the contractors themselves, I guess my question would be, actually be more fuel efficient than those soldiers just for the fact that they're running by a private company that seeks to drive up profit margins?
If the demand side demands more fuel efficient, but as you saw from the big weapons acquisitions, the more heavily fuel intensive tactical weapons won out, right? But if the Department of Defense, and they are doing this now, they are supposed to be setting mandates on fuel efficiency standards. Look, the Department of Defense has always been the kind of place where if they want it, a firm will find it, will bring it, right? I mean, it's too lucrative. So let's go back to your question. You said, well, we just put it in a pit and we burned it, right? Well, sure. But if the Pentagon said, we need companies who can take to the field, forward operating bases, a system that takes trash and turns it into fuel, I'll bet you there's tens of 20s of 30s of companies globally that can do this, right? Quickly. So really it's a question of, I think on these things you're asking about, it's a question of demand side. Now I could be wrong, but I mean, a lot of countries turn trash into fuel or food, right? Yeah, what else? Oh, Bree had a question.
Maybe this is simplistic, because you were talking about a cultural change as far as conservation, effectiveness, efficiency. And the military historically has been able to regulate all of those types of mandates and policies. Do you know of any initiatives, any programs on the basis where they are mandating or regulating those types of cultural cultural change on the bases and then pulling that out into the field?
Yeah, it's happening. I mean, starting with the 2005 Congressional Energy Policy Act, there were certain, the Pentagon then issued certain mandates. So I said that Fort Knox had to be 20% reduction in energy use by 2015, and they've already met that.
Okay.
It's happening, for sure. And there is a whole department within acquisition technology and logistics, Dorothy Robin, and you can read her congressional testimony and her reports. The argument, though, is she's not well funded. It's something ridiculous in FY 2011, less than $300 million. Right? So not, I mean, but if bases, like in Fort Knox, it was private companies that came in and did it for them. They actually built it. They knew the mandate was there. I think it was Morin, or I wrote it down. The company actually came in, built it for them in advance, and then they paid them back over time with savings, they being the U.S. Army. So when these targets are out there, yeah, it's happening in installation and efficiency, and yes.
I actually know firsthand about what you're talking about.
Okay.
As far as like on the installations, Bree, the Department of Defense is also working with the Department of Energy, and what they've done is segmented the U.S. into 5 regions, and they've been allocating for like the last decade $750 million per region to go to these private corporations to update military bases and make them more energy efficient. The way the program runs is, if you can, I guess, get your budget together, they will pay the DOE back with 75% of the savings. So the base realizes 25% of the savings immediately. The DOE gets paid back over hopefully a 10, 15-year period, and then after that, the base just runs more efficiently. Whether or not these are actually being realized in a cost-competitive manner, that comes with the policy change, because unfortunately, with each region, you have, I guess, a contract bid every 10 years, and so it's almost like whichever company wins the bid, obviously they can bid whatever they want because they don't know what's coming down the pipe. They'll say, yeah, we'll be the cheapest. They have a non-compete clause for the next decade. So when they get to build the DOE, they pretty much get to write their own ticket. So as long as it falls within the criteria of being able to be paid back within a certain time frame, it usually flies. Now, is that an effective use of our money? No, but will it instigate change? Yes.
But is that pervasive culture change throughout the base? I mean, you're talking about personnel, you're talking about all of this.
No, I mean that's typically
that's
coming just.
infrastructure, sure, but that's not.
That's just giving incentives to the private market to come in and do it for an obscene amount of money. The base is still, redneck as always.
But actually, like add on to that. When I was leaving Fort Campbell, they the way it usually goes, or how it has historically been, is that when you are on post, like the Army takes all your BAH, or just doesn't pay it to you, but you don't have to pay for anything, no water, no electricity, and not for your housing. Right. But as I was headed out, they're implementing a new system where for the first year they'd monitor like how much the average power use was in each house. And then so they were going to, after they averaged it out, what they would do is you'd get allotted X amount of energy a month, and then from there on, you would have to pay for it. So they're kind of trying to change the culture, at least within the residential areas, and or just pay out of pocket. I mean, they're doing it through your pocketbook pretty much.
I think I'll have to visit several military bases. Yes.
Yeah, I have another question, and this is an overarching thing. I mean, a lot is made of the threats of climate change.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are a lot of people in the military talking about it, and I've read that people in the military have been leading and kind of raising it as an issue with the Arctic, so forth, and everything else. But I'm wondering, like, what specific consequences, I mean, if you're going to do anything about it or factor in your military plan, you have to have a specific consequence and a specific timeline. And it seems to me that the science of climate change is generally well accepted, but it's not sophisticated enough where you can make those types of predictions and factor them into your military plan. So I'm wondering if there are any specific examples. I mean, like for example, the sea level rising. Most of the sea level rising is going to